Quay greetings. And as promised, we are back and we are going to be treated to the live broadcast of Mrs. Anna Reitz. Um, Now, Anna usually posts her videos the following day after she broadcasts them live. So, from what I know, as I said before, Anna is very willing to have the message get out. So, our small platform, our non-threatening platform, uh, we are going to try to get that message out. As Anna has often said, that, get it out there. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So we'll say fair use, although Anna would be a champion of this, this knowledge being freely given, as it should be to Americans. And we thank her for this. She's doing a really great job for someone who is basically an immigrant and who has embraced our tenets, the tenets of our land. So Anna is, I would say, she's an honorary Indian, seriously, because she's taught this Indian so much. And she's helped me to understand, my authority on the land. And how she's taken, so the authority that she's taken, I automatically should know the authority I have as an American Indian. So tonight, once again, we welcome Miss Anna Reitz. She should be going on any minute now, but I'm going to get this thing ready because it takes a little while and you can't see my screen, but trust me, you don't want to. It's just a mess. I'm just going to, get her basic stream thing going. Wait a minute now. Wait. Join the webinar. What you talking about? Now it's doing something it never did before. That's probably because they didn't start yet. That's why it is. That's why it is. It doesn't start till 9. So when I just went to try to log on and it's saying, well, what's your ID? I'm like, I'm not doing the meeting. So we'll give it a few minutes. She starts at 9, and so it'll start any minute now. While we wait, I thought maybe we won't have enough time, so maybe after the meeting, but I want to take a look at let's see if we can look real quickly. I have to pull it up. Let's see. We'll do it really quickly to get an idea of what Indians might get, if they had a case going, So let me share my screen. Where am I going? I'm going right there. Okay. Okay. So war reparations and Weimar Germany. We don't have too much time, but I just want to quickly look at this, because the point is, these were a people that I don't think they were considered indigenous to Germany, and they got their reparations. The Allies' determination to extract reparations from Germany hindered that nation's recovery. Germany was hit so bad that it was like they might not even recover from paying reparations. So that's how ratchet this was, like we don't care if you go down, you're gonna pay. So compare that to our situation, American Indians, and how we really shouldn't have to coddle the ones who have committed acts of genocide very similar to a Holocaust that never stopped. once we got reclassified, oh, the party was on. You know, there's just so many ways that we've been uh made to be the money bag. Now they know that we are, getting the least in wages because of this hidden caste system. So we're not getting paid what a lot of the other races are getting paid, number one, but yet we're paying more. And why is that? It's to cripple us, right? So why should we be concerned about crippling this unlawful foreign corporation, right? So vast sums of money were demanded from Berlin as a compensation for the Kaiserreich's Kaiserreich's role in instigating war. The issue of reparations would provoke significant divisions in the new republic. The legal basis for reparations was provided by Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles. Now, I like the sound of a treaty because a treaty, you're dealing with, let's just say, it's a cut above commerce. You're dealing with men and women of the land. And that's why the United States of America stopped doing treaties within American Indians. And that was our clue to know that we were no longer ever going to really be treated like sovereigns, because that's how you deal with men and women of the land. You have to treaty with them. So once they remove that, you were in a big fat contract, okay? And because their legal system is not based on law of the land and law of commerce, you're going to lose. You're just unprotected in a sea of commerce. Okay. So the legal basis for reparations was provided by Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles, the infamous war guilt clause that deemed Germany responsible for all the loss and damage suffered by Allied nations during the war. Germany's negotiators at the Paris Peace Conference gave an in principle agreement to the payment of reparations. Allied negotiators were unwilling to fix a final reparations figure or determine how these reparations should be recovered. Instead, this was left to an inter-allied reparations commission formed in 1919 by the governments of Britain, France, Belgium, Italy, and Japan. Japan, wow. Huh. That's interesting. Okay. The commission met over 1920 and again in Paris in January 1921. It eventually proposed a final figure of 269 billion gold marks, or 11.3 billion euro. I guess that's euro. The remarkable amount. This was a remarkable amount by any measure. It was the equivalent of 96,000 tons of gold. Or around half the known gold reserves of the entire world. Today it would be it would equate to almost, I don't even know what, okay, $500 billion American dollars. Okay, $500 billion American dollars. Understandably, German delegates refused to accept this figure. This forced the commission to reconvene in London in March. By then, Berlin was under considerable pressure to accept a final reparations figure. The Weimar government had already failed to pay 1 billion euro the 1 billion interim installment, leading the occupation of 3 industrial cities along the Rhine, leading to the occupation. Okay, so once they didn't pay the installment, they were occupied. Okay, by the Weimar was the government that was being sued, and it led to 3 industrial cities along the Rhine being occupied. The total was revised. In April 1920, a London meeting of the commission fixed a final reparations figure of 6.6 billion euro. The reparations installments were to be paid quarterly in gold. This is what stuck out to me. They're not getting fiat, baby. They are getting gold or foreign currency backed by gold. They were not getting fiat, Indians, just to make note. Okay, along with tradable commodities to make their own trade. American Indians, do we have to think about our trade? That's what they would have to repair, right? When they took our farms, what did we have? We had nothing. We had nothing. When I say we need everything back, it's what I said. And I said what I said. Look what they got. They got gold. They didn't even get, like I was saying, credit, which we would still take the credit because that would mean all our bills are paid, basically. Okay, you don't got no gold, whatever. Okay, just give us endless credit, okay? Because you're on my land. As long as you're on my land and you're the one who put me in this bad position, you're going to be the one that upholds me from now until you leave. That would be justice. That's called justice, y'all. Indian style. How about that? All right. I just want to take a look, see at what these folks got, y'all. They got gold, baby boy, baby girl. They got gold and foreign currency that was backed by, so they didn't get no fiat. They didn't get no credit. They got hard cold cheddar, boo. Cheddar, yellow, golden cheddar. They got the real cheddar, y'all. Along with tradable commodities such as steel, raw iron, or coal. Tradable commodities. They were basically given everything to be self-sufficient and to even trade with, right? As a nation among nations. What are we getting back, American Indians? All our land. How about that? All our land, which would be a great start. And then we'd have the raw material that we need to be sovereign as we should be. Berlin was informed that any defaults on these payments would lead to the occupation of the industrial Ruhr region and the confiscation of raw materials. So they were going to take their resources, materials, and industrial equipment there. So they were just going to take their resources. That's what they were going to do. And that's not even, I'm assuming that this is not the homeland of the, people that were being paid these reparations. While this revised amount was less than 2/3 the initial figure, it remained well beyond the capacity of war-ravaged German economy, Worldwide debate. Well, there won't be no debate that this what happened to us American Indians, right? That's just so evident. There's just no denying the world took part in this to a certain extent. I mean, if Africa is not singing like a bird, saying, "Oh, it's a lie, they're not African," and she's kind of complicit, right? But we know they don't really got shit allegedly to sue them for, right? What we want is to not be called you anymore. That's what we want from you, Africa. Quit that stuff. Stop calling us African American. The reparations figure generated worldwide debate for a decade. In England, the noted economist John Maynard Keynes criticized the agreed figure. Keynes suggested the true amount of war damage had been exaggerated by the Allies, particularly France and Belgium. Forcing Germany to pay the full amount, Keynes argued, would not only devastate the German economy, but would have a detrimental impact on European trade and probably generate considerable political instability. Germany made an initial reparations payment of 250 million, or about 0.8% of the total, in August 1921. Even this small installment placed enormous strains on the German economy, which suffered from dwindling gold reserves, post-war drop in foreign trade, and a reliance on imported raw materials for its industries. Germany struggles to pay. In late 1920, Weimar government asked the Reparations Commission for a moratorium of payments. This was granted in May 1922 over the opposition of the French government. In 1922, the value of the German Reichsmark collapsed. By late in the year, almost 3,500 Reichsmarks were needed to purchase the US dollar. Whoa. $1 US. Unable to import or buy foreign exchange, the German government found itself unable to meet its reparations obligations. The French government, claiming the German government was crying poor and acting purposely and dishonestly, began to agitate for punitive action. It should be noted that Germany was not the only European nation struggling to account for its wartime debts. France was itself defaulting. The one who's trying to make Germany pay was defaulting on scheduled installments on its wartime loans, particularly those to its largest creditor, the United States. And American Indians ain't seeing none of that, right, y'all? United States. That's the corporation. It's not America, okay? So they get their pockets fat, right? Other nations struggling to pay the corporation that sits on our land, and we don't see none of that shit. Instead, they're trying to get the shit out of our pockets, right? Right. One German cartoon of the early 1920s showed the French prime minister threatening war against Germany, but being obstructed by Uncle Sam, who suggested, "Why don't you pay for your last war before starting another?" Hello? The issues of war debts and reparations remained divisive issues for much of the 1920s. The reparations figures would be constantly challenged and revised, most notably by the Dawes. Oh boy, that kind of makes our ears perk up, right? Indigenous. Who the fuck is this Dawes person that keeps showing up? The Dawes Plan in 1924 and the Young Plan in 1929. Who is this Dawes family, y'all? The Dawes Road. Anyway, so that was it. I just thought that'd be interesting to read. You can read that. I got to start getting back to Anna. So those are the 5 key points. You can read them. Pause if you want to read. But I should be, trying to get Anna up and running. Let's see if we can do that. Oh boy, it's asking me to log in. It doesn't usually do that. Maybe it's because I'm recording. It's acting funny. I never have to. I've never had to log into the webinar, and of course, I don't know my login, right? Because it should have started by now. It's Monday, 9:14. Boy, oh boy, boy. Yo, I don't know. Okay, okay, okay. Let's see. Is there any other way to do this? Why is it not working? Now it's gonna take me somewhere I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Look, is this it? I already have one going. Okay, something is up, and we might not be able to do this tonight. I'm sorry. If not, maybe it's because I'm recording this. There might be some kind of mechanism so you can't record it, you know. Okay. It looks like it's starting now. Okay. So this is the latest Anna video. Ooh. Let's just let it start. I don't know why it's asking me stupid questions. What is this thing doing? It's just acting very strange tonight. No, I don't have this, you know. Uh, Come on, just connect, okay? Uh, use my microphone? No, she doesn't. She does not want to use my microphone. Okay. Oh,
Right? But it wasn't. Vietnam was a mercenary conflict. And that's all it could be. Because our military has been operating as a mercenary force since 1869.
Well, that's very helpful. It makes more sense now because we were just trying to figure out who really knew and who didn't, and who was non-disclosing, and that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that.
It was the British rats, as usual.
good, Brittany.
Right.
Yes. They have an absolutely horrible reputation and they deserve it. So, and their reputation, by the way, it's getting worse by the day as a result of what they've done here and in other countries. We've bulldogged down the proof that they've been operating and illegally occupying this country, the former Commonwealth, the countries that were taken over in the Second World War, including Japan, and Britain, as it turns out. They even did it to their own people in Britain. So these are, and they're using quote unquote territorial forces to do it. And what it all comes down to is that Britain was finally shaken by the ruff of the neck hard enough so that they had to give up their colonial empire And so they turned right around and they tried to create a corporate empire under the same sort of system that they used in India. And people are familiar still with the Raj in India. And those were territorial forces too.
And the caste system.
So all of this started in England, and all of it started slightly before it started here in America. And they did the same thing with India and with their own people and with us, which was to employ these so-called territorial forces. The Raj was a mercenary force. What they've done here is all under mercenary force. And what they've done in their own country is under mercenary force. And it's all both illegal and unlawful as hell. It always has been. The thing is they got away with it. And they got away with it by organizing as municipal corporations. So I want to observe to people, what does that mean? You know, when someone says municipal corporation, I think that most people think, oh, city government, right? But then they don't stop to think a little further and realize which city government. Oh, whoa, Waukesha. No. Rome. Rome has the municipal system, right? So you're talking about City of Rome corporations all over the world. And they proliferated, and they have managed to keep all of this under wraps so that people didn't recognize what they were doing by calling it a city government or calling it a municipal government. And once again, lying by omission, not making it clear that the municipality being referenced, the ultimate owner of all this stuff, was the city of Rome. So anyway, here you've got the municipal corporations, right? So now you know that these are municipal corporations organized under the format that was established by the city of Rome for the specific purpose of commercial interaction.
Commerce.
So what did they do? When it came time to deal with some of these issues of being able to better mesh with the rest of the world and the way the rest of the world was organized, we set up the District of Columbia. Now, everybody knows, I think, that the District of Columbia is not a state. It's a separate enclave that was carved out of Virginia and Maryland and set aside for the purpose of providing a federal capital and a federal domicile where they could have their respective subcontractors organized. And that means the American federal subcontractor, the British territorial subcontractor, and at that time, the Holy Roman Empire subcontractor were all supposed to conduct their business in the District of Columbia. And that's why the District of Columbia was created. And that's why the constitutions have this clause that very clearly makes the members of the Congress responsible as a plenary government for the city of Washington, D.C.
And it's a neutral territory for the three subcontractors, correct?
Right. We have our capital, right? We have our own national capital in Philadelphia, which we've always had and always maintained. And then they have a separate federal capital. And it was set up that way as two separate things. They could not be mistaken one for the other. Now, you know, these guys are like show hogs, right? They make all the noise, and they, you know, put out the party ribbons and the hats, and, you know, they throw the big parties, and they get all the attention focused on them. And people begin to think that that's their capital, but no. It's a separate federal capital. And it was meant to be set up so that all of the states and all of the other federal subcontractors and foreign countries could come to Washington, D.C. to conduct business safely and on neutral ground. It was supposed to be neutral ground from day one. And it's very clearly stated. Now, the reason they gave them the plenary power grant was granted to the American federal subcontractor, not the territorial subcontractor, not the Holy Roman Empire's subcontractor, to the American subcontractor. And the purpose, the intent and the purpose and the limitation of that grant of plenary power was to literally govern the city of Washington, D.C. as a separate, neutral federal capital.
Only DC.
Nothing more or less. And what they did over time is that the territorial government of the British territorial government, basically think of it as the military, got their territorial Congress to misinterpret and overstep their role and claim, that they went ahead and they exercised the plenary powers that were never actually given to them or granted to them. And they created instead an independent international city-state out of Washington, D.C. That's not what the plenary powers grant is, and that's not what it implies. That was not the intent, and that was not the grant given. And it wasn't the group that the grant was given to either. So it's basically just a gigantic fraud scheme, which should never have been allowed to take place. But once they did that, the military solved its problem of not having a civilian government to answer to. You see, and they actually own and control the whole thing. Because it's their territorial Congress then trying to act as the municipal Congress. And they were literally evading the civilian control of the actual government that employed them and paid them loyally.
Wow.
That's how they substituted and evaded the civilian oversight of the actual government here.
So we don't oversee our own government, American Indians or.
And now all of this stuff is just right there. And it's all unlawful. Most of it's illegal also, but it's all unlawful and most of it's illegal. And God knows, immoral. Horribly immoral.
Well, and in direct conflict with checks and balances.
Absolutely in conflict with every intent of every treaty and every commercial contract, services contract, everything. This was our own dear military working a putsch against us. And they used Abraham Lincoln as the ringer. Now, Lincoln was not eligible to be the Federation president because he was a foreigner. He was a member of the Illinois Bar beginning in 1834. So he set sail and left our shores and left behind any attachment to us. Okay? He had made his choices at that point in his life that as long as he was going to be a bar attorney, He had nothing to do with, he could not serve the Federation in any way. So he could not be the actual president, the president of the Federation of States, the actual organic states.
He's a turncoat.
In 1819, the States of America, the American subcontractor running the Federal Republic, also prohibited attorneys from holding any public office in their operations with the Titles of Nobility Amendment, which was ratified in 1819, quite a few years before Lincoln even entered the bar. Now, this was no secret. People at the time knew this. They knew what the Titles of Nobility Amendment was about. They knew that it had been, added to the American Federal Subcontractors Constitution, the Constitution for the United Small U States of America. And Maine, God bless it forever, printed up 10,000 copies and distributed them all over hell. For having the foresight and the determination to share the news with the public, that we have the proof that this was done. So Mr. Lincoln knew that he could not serve as the president of our Federation of States. He also knew that he could not serve as the president of our Federal Republic. And everybody else that was with him, all these denizens of Washington, D.C., certainly knew that he couldn't serve in that capacity. And so what they did was, again, a substitution fraud. They substituted our president of a commercial corporation operating in the District of Columbia for the president of our Federation of States. They just passed him off, presented him to the people as if he were the actual president and as if he were endowed with all of the authorities of the president. And they just never told anybody which president he really was. He was the president of the British Territorial Subcontractor.
Like they all are.
And that means he was the president of a British Territorial Municipal Corporation operated out of the District of Columbia.
A CEO, essentially.
He was a CEO of a commercial corporation. That's all that the federal presidents ever were. The president of our Federation of Organic States, however, an office which has remained vacated for many years because we haven't had the broad spectrum elections that we felt were necessary. We've had to operate under a head of state. The American president is the actual president of the Federation of Organic States. And he too is a business manager. But he is the president of an unincorporated holding company. Because that's what the Federation of States actually is. An unincorporated holding company. And it's, we call it an instrumentality of the states, the individual states acting together. All right, so the actual president's office is in the Federation. And that unincorporated office is the power office. That's where the powers reside.
Unincorporated.
Now, the head of state, what are the historical references to the head of state?
Well, there aren't a lot of historical references per se, but remember, this is a holding company. It is a business. And the hereditary part of it comes in, where the Belchers, who were kings in their own right in England, came over here and used their sovereignty to set up the whole thing.
The whole thing meaning the United States of America.
Right.
Yeah.
They set up the sovereignty underlying and underwriting the United States of America Federation as an unincorporated holding company. And nobody else had anything to do with it. They just set that up. And as you'll see, the flag and everything belongs to a series of coats of arms that belong specifically to our family, to the French nobles that came over and conquered England.
Right, and the flags can be seen in the Declaration of Flag document, but their roots are from the period in France.
Exactly.
And what people don't realize is that for a country to be established, you had to have a sovereign.
You had to have a sovereign who was underwriting your business operations. And so the colonists were faced with a rather grim prospect. Here they won the war, but they still need a sovereign to conduct business internationally, and to do it as a country. So remember now, go back just a click. The Norman French came across and they conquered England. That's called the Norman Conquest. When the Norman Conquest was finished, the leader of the Norman Conquest, William of Normandy, sometimes called William the Conqueror, took an inventory of what he'd conquered, down to the last gnat, down to the last goat, on the furthest farm. Okay? And he produced 2 records of that inventory. In 1087, when he died, that inventory was very precisely split apart into all sorts of little fiefdoms in England, and they were given to his loyal barons, the French Norman barons that came with him across the Channel. And each one of them became a sovereign in their own right in their little fiefdom. They were kings in England and barons in France. They still owed William and his sons fealty in France. But in England, they were their own kings. And that's how they could sign the Magna Carta and make it stick, no matter what King John wanted. Because in England, John wasn't a king. And that's the secret.
He was a king only in France, right?
He was a king only in France. Then he cut a deal with Pope Innocent, in which he became the overseer of Commonwealth church lands in England. And that's how he got control of some land in England, as an overseer of the Pope. And that's all they've ever been in England ever since. And that's a very strange thing for people to take in. But for example, Elizabeth II, everyone thinks that she's the Queen of England, right? No. And it was actually proven in court, in the case of Ya versus Revena, that she actually, on her coronation oath, never actually entered the office the Christian office of the Queen of England. 3 days, within 3 days of taking her coronation oath, she breached it and went and sat on the chair of the estates, the corporate office, instead. So she was never actually queen of anything in England, Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. And her claim to be a queen came instead in Europe. Prince Philip was a prince in England, but a king in Greece. So she was a queen in Greece.
Wow.
Make this stuff up.
Can't fathom all of
And the
this
Queen Mom?
fuckery.
Oh, well, she had her own history. But this whole thing is like that. They borrowed royal offices and traded them around so that they could judge on making it appear that these people were kings and queens in England, when in fact they never were. They haven't been since the PLS and Christianity. The real kings and queens of England are of Norman French descent. And they all have valid claims under each little fiefdom in Britain. And that's where you find who is a valid king in England? Ivan Talbot, the Lord High Steward. He's a valid king. He has his own little fiefdom. It belongs to him by direct lineage. Now, there are plantagenets in Australia. They're valid kings in England. Okay? So it's all these Norman French names: Neville, Talbot, Plantagenet. You look through these records and you see French, Norman. They're the actual landowners. They're the ones that this is sealed to forever.
Oh,
They are the actual kings and queens of England and always have been since 1087 AD. And these other guys that have been coming in here are doing something that is just absolutely duplicitous. And they're basically fooling the people of the British Isles and fooling the rest of the world into believing their shtick. And all the while, the Pope has the little kill switch here in his thumb and forefinger, because he knows and he has the records and he can prove that they're a bunch of liars, a pack of charlatans. And he can bring their quote-unquote reign and authority to an end simply by exposing them. So the Pope gets whatever he wants out of them.
wow.
Gotcha.
This is just too deep for comprehension,
Boy, it's
dog.
all starting to make a lot of sense now.
So the French are
Yes.
kind of, yeah.
Yes, it does. And okay, so when you go back 200 years, there were very few corporations. Okay? 200 years ago, in 1823, there were relatively few corporations. The corporations that people most commonly had to deal with were testamentary trusts that were created for use after a person died or went missing. So what you do is you would set up your testamentary trust, known as your last will and testament, and you would have it set up that specified where your different goods and personal belongings and whatever else that you had as an estate would be disposed of. You left instructions as to who was to act as your executor and what he was required to do and what he had agreed to do to the best of his ability. So, imagine a last will and testament. Nellie Grace Durbin leaves her home and garden to her son, Felix, okay? and she leaves her painting collection to her grandson Jason, and her jewelry to her granddaughter Alicia, and all this stuff that happens. So these are testamentary trusts in which you gave someone, a trusted friend or relative, the authority to take possession of your worldly belongings after your death and to distribute them according to what? Your will, because it's your stuff. Okay? So those are about the most common kinds of corporations that anyone ever had to deal with, trusts, and especially testamentary trusts. And then all of a sudden, something happened. Well, this had actually been going on for about 100 years in England prior to it hitting our shores. The kings and queens of England, especially after the Hanoverian succession in 1701, began a practice of chartering commercial corporations, that is municipal corporations, to provide them with services. And I'm sure that people have seen at one time or another some company, Berwick and Sons, and then they have this chartered in 1773 as purveyors of fine figs to Her Majesty, blah, 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 okay? These were royal chartered vendors, essentially. Vendors of goods and services that had the official stamp that they served the royal Hanoverian house, and this is where the king gets his tea, sort of thing. And so companies rushed to do this because it increased their prestige, and people would buy because they wanted to drink the same tea as the king, or they wanted to use the same soap as the queen, blah, 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 on and on and on. So they began chartering all of these royal corporations that then became commercial interests, that then became vendors, commercial vendors, instead of trade vendors. All right? So this had been going on for about 100 years in England, but then it began coming over here. And of course, we didn't have a king or a queen to charter these things, but nonetheless, they began doing business here. And so we started seeing more commercial corporations. They were coming in from England and from Holland and from France and from Germany and all these other places. And we didn't have any vendors to trade with them. They were just sitting here trading with other people, selling their soap and their tea and their whatnot to our people. But we had no way of taking our business to their countries and doing the same. So instead of us chartering corporations, which we could do at the federation level, but not below the federation level, they set up these municipal corporations in the District of Columbia to be able to trade with other municipal corporations.
See, so that's how that whole thing started.
Right. Now, this didn't happen in a vacuum. People back then did realize the danger of corporations. And so they also realized that by their very nature, corporations are fictional. I mean, think of it. We say PepsiCo, and everybody has this immediate flash of a giant soft drink manufacturer, right? And well enough, that's what it is. But it doesn't really exist. I mean, you can't put your hand out and touch PepsiCo. You can touch a building that belongs to PepsiCo. You could poke the chairman of the board and the belly flag, but he's not really PepsiCo either, is he? It's a fiction.
that causes
It's
so much real
a convenience
damage
to be able to describe the
to
kind of
men
business they
and
do,
women of the land.
to describe what kind of regulatory laws pertain to that business, and who has an ownership interest in it. And that's it. So these are all legal fictions, and they belong in the realm of the air. You know, we talk about the three general jurisdictions, air, land, and sea, right? And all federal employees talk about this constantly, especially in the military. You'll hear it, oh, this is air, land, and sea, right? So these are the three general jurisdictions, and all things that are legal fictions belong to the air. Why? Because they're just in the realm of ideas. It's all just thought. It's like art. It's
Conceptual.
like copyrights, trademarks, you know, performance arts. These are things that are either fictional outright, like a corporation, or that are creatures of the mind and spirit. All right. So where do corporations belong in the general jurisdictions? They belong in the jurisdiction of the air. And who rules the jurisdiction of the air?
The Pope.
The Pope.
And Satan,
So when all of these corporations,
according to Christian.
including the City of Rome corporations, started proliferating and growing and, you know, sprouting up everywhere, suddenly we have S corps and C corps and PLCs and foundations and cooperatives and all these different things. They're all different kinds of legal visions. Okay, what's a poor person to do faced with all this? Well, there were deep considerations here. And the national governments had an agreement, or have an agreement, if they're active, with the Holy Roman Empire, the City of Rome, and the Pope. And the essence of it is that under ecclesiastical law, which all this fundamentally and at the end of the day boils up to, the Pope is responsible for liquidating any corporation that operates unlawfully. But of course, somebody having a valid reason and standing to object has to produce a competent complaint. Otherwise, he has no reason to act. He's like a court that can't do anything about it because there's nobody complaining.
No plaintiff, no case.
So it doesn't do any good to blame the Pope if you don't bring forward your own complaint. And if you don't establish your standing to do so.
Have to have standing.
All right, well, we've done that in spades several times over. So our issue here is that these municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia have asserted against their employers and violated their actual trust and their actual service contracts, which are the constitutions. And they've done so egregiously for a long time. So we have no trouble whatsoever to proving that they've operated unlawfully and that they have violated their contracts and their treaties. But we can also demonstrate that they've acted in bad faith. And bad faith has a meaning and connotation in the District of the Air that is somewhat different than it is when we just bandy it about on the street. When you act in the District of the Air, intentionality becomes a factor. The intent of the contract becomes important. And the way that things are structured is always to establish a good faith contract. Okay? The British are like these nasty little children that shake your hand with their right hand and behind their left, they've got their left hand behind their back and they got their fingers crossed. Okay? That's bad faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when they violate good faith in the jurisdiction of the air, it's a considerably more important issue, and it's a considerably worse issue for them than a lot of other things. So, bad faith, disservice, unlawful activities against the interests of the living people, and especially against us as their employers, all of that stinks to high heaven. And yet nobody could do anything about it except us.
And us
Nobody
Indians.
could demand liquidation or their transference but us. And so we've done it.
And when you say us, you actually mean at the federation level, because it's international law.
Right, the Federation of States, the holders of the land and soil jurisdiction are the ones that had to come forward. The federal subcontractors couldn't do it. Even if the Federal Republic were in operation, it could not bring this complaint because it would not be standing on the land and soil.
Very interesting. Thank you for that.
So we had to bring the complaint.
See, Indians, why
And
we
now
got to stand.
it becomes very apparent
Look at the state.
that British territorial subcontractors acted in bad faith and failed to give us any reasonable standard of information or support or assistance or defense. And for the very good reason that their guys were the ones that were pulling all the crap. Abraham Lincoln was a bar attorney. He was British territorial. The members of the military that assisted him, Ulysses S. Grant and William Tecumseh Sherman and William McClellan and all these other people that were part of the mercenary force of the northern state of state organizations, all of them were British territorial.
And they
And
say
they're in that status.
Lincoln was a Moor, they say.
So the treaties that we had coming out of the War of Independence.
And I think the other thing that we were driving home yesterday is that even if it is the territorial doing the actual fraud or crime, the Pope is still the owner of that corporation.
Well, he's the owner of the corporation, but he's also the arbiter.
Oh,
He's the one who gets to say whether they live or die as a corporation. He can liquidate them. He can discipline them. But when there is clear and unequivocal proof that they've acted in bad faith, that they've committed unlawful acts contrary to the interests of living people, and especially to that this has been committed against their employers while they were under contract and being paid to protect those same employers. Think about this. Even in commercial law, when you pay someone under contract to protect you, and they not only fail to protect you, but work to usurp against you and to steal from you and illegally confiscate from you under false pretenses, then their sins are increased. Let's put it that way. They have received payment from us continuously to protect us against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they failed to protect us against domestic enemies when they failed to protect us against Abraham Lincoln.
Or more.
So all these years later, they've been collecting their pay and failing their job, failing their contract. And we can all attest to the fact that they've been very, very sloppy and very, very dishonorable and very cavalier about any obligation to obey the Constitution that created them. And now all that comes to a screeching halt. Now they're up against it. Now they're facing liquidation for cause. And basically, when something like this comes forward, the punk is obligated to act.
Well, he should have known
Well,
all
you were
this was going on.
describing the fact that this happens under ecclesiastical law,
Right.
and basically, it's all in the public record, and so there's really no argument.
Right. I mean, if I said something about them that was untrue, you know, if I said they were responsible for this, this, and this, and it was actually some of their government that did it, they'd have the right to come forward and say, no, we didn't do that one. Yeah. But otherwise, no, there really isn't any answer for a corporation against a living man or woman, or against a government that's operating in the proper jurisdiction with the proper standing.
And we're the only
Right. And, you know, this whole thing has been a conundrum inside the conundrum. And it revolves around the District of Columbia being set apart as a separate enclave for them to operate within. Now, I personally think that this is all well and good and beyond any reasonable standard to completely liquidate all municipal corporations operating in the District of Columbia, or, you know, that have been involved in any of this skullduggery. And with that, then, what reason do we have for operating the federal district any longer?
don't really need to. I mean,
No,
it serves no purpose.
no, all they ever did was knock us in the eye and punch us in the gut and stab us in the back. So,
Right?
you know, who needs them?
Don't need them. Don't want them.
Don't want it.
You know?
Don't need
Right,
it.
and it violates the entire purpose of setting aside the District of Columbia.
Which is why you want to take that land back.
Might as well. No point in leaving a pirate base for them.
Heck no.
And so, as far as defense, people are worried about, oh, but what are we going to do? Well, I need to point this out to people, but we haven't had control of any defense force here for a while.
Hello.
And it's because these municipal corporations have continued to weasel around and make deals and cut off this part and that part. And you know, all the time they've been racketeering here at home. And they've been war profiteering everywhere else. So they have been just flat out worthless for any purpose or for any benefit to anybody but themselves this entire time.
Exactly.
So these worthlessers need to be tossed out with garbage, and we need to sort through and find those that are worth keeping. You know, there has to be a transition in the issue of defense, and there have to be American forces separated out from the former US forces. And there has to be a come to Jesus meeting with the quote unquote British monarch about exactly where the line is drawn between our countries. Now, if I were a Brit, which in some respect, someone could say that I had a responsibility as the heir of Powys. Well, maybe I do have a responsibility, but I have the druthers to exercise the right. Now, here's the point. If I were in Britain right now, if I were born in England, or I was born in Scotland, or I was born in Ireland, I would be raising high holy hell. I would be going to all of the other heirs of all the other Norman era fiefdoms. I would be explaining the situation, and I would be saying, who in the hell was the overseer of the Commonwealth? He is. I would be asking that question day and night. And I would be asking, what? Greece? And I would be reviewing the case Yah, and I believe it's just spelled Y-A-H, versus Regina, which definitively proved that Queen Elizabeth never honored the big public coronation oath, never actually entered upon the throne at all. So everything that she did from the time that she entered her office until she died was fraud, with a capital F. In fact, the fraud goes all the way back to Henry VIII, who was set up to be the Protestant king when actually he was just nothing but a pricking renegade who wanted his own way about everything. A glutton, a womanizer, a drunk, a complete and utter hair-raising. Okay? Back in the day of Henry VIII, he began what were called the enclosure laws, by which he sought, as the purported king of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, to seize upon the private property of people that owed him nothing, that didn't owe him a fart in the wind. And so he again was a fraud artist. Are you beginning to see a common theme here?
Yes, indeed.
He was acting as a Protestant so that the Pope could keep his lily white fingers clean of all this dirty business, right? And at the same time, he was using a fraudulent claim of authority to seize upon the private lands and properties of people in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales as collateral for him. And it's all bogus, it's all bunco, it's bunco all the way back. So if you really want to get to tooth and nail here in Britain, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, number one, remember that Britain was conquered. And it was thoroughly conquered, and it was conqueror, God bless him forever. And when William died, there's this thing called Settlement of the Norman Conquest, which is William's will, in which he parceled everything out in great detail, and which he purposefully disallowed any of his sons any scrap of land anywhere in England. He gave it all to the barons who had supported him in the fight as their reward, together with sovereignty in their own right. And when you look at the Magna Carta, Britain, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, you will see that those Norman kings joined together and signed the Magna Carta against any claim of King John, and they guaranteed the freedom of the people within their fiefdoms to act as free men and women with their own little freeholds and land to live on, their homes. That's where this whole idea of an Englishman's home is his castle is from. It comes from the Norman conquest and the French. It does not come from any so-called British monarch, ever. All of the quote-unquote British monarchs have been gluttonous, depraved, self-interested, duplicitous, and usually ruthless. They're figureheads that are controlled by the Pope. They are overseers for the Church's Commonwealth lands and interests in Great Britain. Even those that pretend to be Protestant, so as to disallow the Pope from all the dirty work that Henry VIII did, even those are nothing but overseers for the Pope. And the only thing that they have any control over are the Church's Commonwealth lands. And only by contract, which the Pope can sever. And which he should. He should just come out on the steps and say, look, these guys are all a bunch of pikers. They're all a bunch of goons and crooks and fraud artists. That's what he should do. I don't know what he would do. But that's what he should do to keep the church out of this.
Oh, the church
This is going to be dirty.
already in a
Dirty poetry is not about pedophiles. That's just sensationalist. There have been pedophiles with us since the days of Adam and Eve, practically. And they're as twisted and crazy now as they ever were. But so what? We've got lots of evil in this world. And they just pick on these really hot button emotional issues, the sensationalist side of it, to keep your attention drawn over here while the actual attention needs to be focused over here.
exactly.
So forget about these accusations of homosexual priests groping choir boys and, raping little girls, and even all this nice circle crap about, oh, they need to sacrifice a baby or a virgin or whatever. That's what they want you to look at. That's what they want you to focus on. So just immediately turn your back and go, what's going on? Because you can bet that whatever they want you to look at and focus on and get your emotions running about, that's not what you should be focusing on at all.
Facts.
And in this case, it isn't anything like that. I mean, as terrible as these crimes are, if you look at what's really going on, they are setting up according to the Nazi playbook, right straight out of early 1930s Germany. And what they did was they had a guy set up, groomed from birth, and he was not an Austrian paper hanger. No, not at all. At least of Adolf Hitler schmoozing with the royals, and not just Edward. Lots of royals. And the second going, they're German, right? They can't succession. But they as overseers of the public, but nonetheless, they ruled. And look at their faces. It's like people open their eyes and just look. Are they British faces? No. No. Just take a little check the channel and look around. Those are not British faces. They're German faces. Those are German races. I want to observe to you something that you can look at and never forget. Give a picture of Himmler's lieutenant, Reinhard Heydrich, 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 Reinhard. He was Himmler's second in command, and he was arguably the smartest SS officer that ever lived in terms of being able to figure out ways around obstacles. Let's put it that way. And you'll notice that except for the fact that he's blonde, he's the splitting image of Prince Charles. How did that happen?
I wonder.
And take off Hitler's ridiculous little distracting mustache, and what's he look like? Well, he's the splitting image of King George V. And why did Elizabeth II call him Uncle Adolf?
Right? Uncle?
And do we have a long history of royal bastards occupying high positions in the espionage and in the commercial affairs of Britain?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we have got a huge history of royal bastards occupying positions of trust and working for the king in Britain. To the best of my knowledge and belief, Adolf Hitler was a royal bastard of King Henry V. And he was set up from practically birth. He was extremely well educated. He was extremely well practiced in rhetoric. That didn't come from some backstage Austrian paper hanger. What kind of fools are we if we believe in this bunk? And they're trying to set up the same thing here. They had a whole bunch of bumbling, incompetent military people. They had a whole bunch of incompetent, bumbling bureaucrats. They had all of these little principalities. That obstacle, which was Prussia. And they had a great match with Prussia because Prussia took over Hanover, where the Hanoverian dynasty came from. That was the First World War.
Interesting, very interesting.
Oh, this is nothing but a gigantic family feud and grudge match.
You've said that before.
And if you doubt me, just pick up some of the books of Emily Windsor Craig, Cragg. There you'll see the family photographs, the history, all of it. And she's another royal bastard. Only she admits it. Now she ended of either royal bastards or people that are royals themselves who know the inside skinny, who before they died published books, published monographs, did videos, did, and they've admitted all this right in front of your eyes. And actually, if you just use your eyes, literally your eyes, you can see it. So they set Germany up They set up the whole Nazi movement. They funded the Nazi movement. And what did they do? In the beginning, Hitler presents himself as, you know, one of the boys in the back room, you know, a laborer out of work, sitting around beer halls, feeling sorry for himself and spinning all this rhetoric, right? And all the disenfranchised, disinherited men of the First World War, who are now stuck paying reparations for this war way up over their heads, so they can't get ahead or get anywhere, who are unemployed or barely employed. All these people start listening to him. And at that point, he's just drawing any way he can. All disenfranchised, the Jews, the homosexuals who are facing homosexual laws, you know, outlawing their relationships, brings in all these characters. But mostly it was the LGBTQ crowd that he used to get to power. They were his brown shirts. And they did only you know what work. They're the ones that did Kristallnacht. They're the ones that did the Reichstag fire. And as soon as Mr. Herr Hitler had become chancellor, guess what? All the brown shirts disappeared. And where did they go? They were thrown in prison and they were murdered by the bucket loads. And that's exactly what they'll do here. They've set up this whole situation. They have the silver tongue, they have the silver tongue Trump. You know, and they brought out the LGBTQ crowd. They've sucked it in. They've got a bunch of streets. Well. And what they're doing is they're identifying them to kill them like they have, just like they killed the black shirts. And they're trying to get this racist theme going. They're trying to get all these innocent black people out there doing crazy stuff. Why do you think they are actually funding Black Lives Matter? Is it because they care about Black lives? Hell no. You can see how warm and cuddly the Queen wants to Meghan Markle.
I prefer American Indian, please.
Person in the royal family? That's right. Realize what the history of these people really is. What they really are, what they believe. They think that they are the legendary queen. The great whites, you know, that I don't know what in the hell they think that they are so superior, except that they're a bunch of crooks and they spend their entire lives figuring out how to screw other people. This is, you know, but anyway, they have no affinity for anybody of color. They really don't. And they're always constantly trying to draw in people of color to do illegal things, like riot, and do things that they can be punished for. And they, you know, which is dirty work, just like the green shirts. And they pay them and they manipulate them and they feed them a whole bunch of crap. Just lie to them. Tell them all sorts of weird things that didn't happen. Fill them full of all sorts of stories and narratives. And the people go out and they act upon this. And then you have Joe Biden, who, you know, he finds his corollaries in the absolutely useless chancellors before Hitler. You know, running the country right into the dirt, offending everybody everywhere, causing riots, destroying the economy, blah, 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 blah. He's like, you know, just take out your cookie cutter and go, there's Joe Biden. And it's like he's been up. I'm setting us up to be so sick of that son of a gun that we will just absolutely go. And, you know, Unfortunately, there are too damn many people who are falling for it. They didn't learn from the history the first time, and so now we're threatened with them repeating it. They're setting us up to create a conservative backlash,
Yes.
hoping that they're going to get another Adolf Hitler out of this, and that they can then use him to undermine everything that would be a defense for this country because he's on their side.
Oh Lord.
He's employed by them.
No God.
He's the president of a subcontractor.
Hello.
So, does that make him afraid of America?
Nope.
Not so far as I'm concerned. Not this or that. To know what that is about and who they are. I just published called Why We Blame the Military.
Why we blame them?
I know that's like kicking your favorite dog and shitting on the white carpet, but the truth is that the military has been responsible for all of this since 1863, and they still are, and they are operating as a foreign municipal corporation out of the District of Columbia, and they are operating without any of the intended civilian government oversight from our government, which they've evaded by putting all sorts of dirty deals and backdoor crap. And never once in this entire time has the military ever turned to us, their actual employers, the American states and people, and said, okay, this is what's going on, how can we help? Not once. The military has never done that from 1863 to this moment. And of all the things that I blame them for, and I blame them for plenty, that's the biggest one. Just the fact that they sat there and kept mum and manipulated things and served themselves and left us to pay the bill and never did anything to really help or defend the people of this country.
Not one bit.
I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of veterans out there that are going to be very depressed and very angry, and they may be angry at me, or they may be angry at their commanders. Well, any anger against me is misplaced. I'm just telling you, as the messenger, what these things really are, how they really operate, what they have done, what they haven't done. And if you look at the information that we have published, you can see that the Department of Defense Incorporated, a municipal corporation in the District of Columbia, owns all of the bad actors. Absolutely all of the very worst bad actors belong to DOD. NIH, CDC, FDA, the big players in the pandemic, and all the maiming and the death and everything resulting from that, it's on them. They own all those organizations, and they deployed the employees of those organizations to create this crap fest. They also own other things that you've been blaming all your life. They own the FBI. So all this idea that the FBI is their enemy when they own them is ridiculous. To the CIA when the CIA is under their finger and paid by them. They even own the territorial Congress. Yes, Congress was stupid enough to incorporate itself and sold out as an institution to the Department of Defense. So now they literally own their own territorial And they're here on our soil, collecting paychecks to protect us from us, right? While illegally occupying this country,
Occupy.
illegally occupying Commonwealth, the former Commonwealth, illegally occupying Western Europe, illegally occupying Japan. Stuff is not only illegal, it's unlawful. They've been acting as pirates in our names, and they've been charging us for the cost of their wars, and they've been collecting and safety and collecting it's giant slush funds and pension funds and investment funds, and they passed all this off as if they're doing it for us, while they're chasing us around pretending that we're municipal employees or we're territorial employees or we're their dependents. Just smoking up all this crackhead and misapplying it to their employers.
Said what she
One
said.
of the things, Anna, that I found pretty interesting in studying the corporate tree was that it's got all the branches of the military that are incorporated. Each branch is an incorporated entity. And but nowhere did the Space Force show up.
It wouldn't, because it's private.
Is it German? Is it a German corporation?
Yet to find out here. I suspect it is.
I think it is. Anyways, sidebar.
When you get down to it, we'll find out.
Right. So in the letter liquidating the DoD and all of the branches of the military, all the military districts, et cetera, but what that's going to come down to is reconstructing the honest soldiery. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, when you have a national force that's there for the defense of the nation, that's an honorable soldiery. When you have armed forces that work for private corporations, commercial corporations, then you've got a force of commercial mercenaries. And that's the difference between a soldier and a merc. A soldier is supposed to work for an actual national government. A mercenary operates for a corporation. So you can see literally in the records that these have all been operated as commercial entities. And all the men and women who have been sucked into contracting with them under non-disclosure, I thought that they were acting as honorable soldiers, when in fact they were operating as commercial mercenaries. And I'll tell you why they keep that so close to the collar, is that as honorable soldiers, they're protected. But as commercial mercenaries, they're not. The Geneva Conventions do not apply to mercenaries.
Right.
In fact, mercenaries are largely held to be engaged in illegal activities and to be scumbags. But they're very well paid scumbags.
But not ours.
Right, that's the problem. You see, they couldn't possibly go out on the street and get all these young people to sign up for the paltry benefits and rewards that they offer, the paltry pay that they offer, if they were clean and if they said, okay, well, we're mercenaries, join us, and the starting pay for a mercenary is like $225,000 a year. plus this really luxe life insurance and all sorts of other insurances for the families and blah, 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 blah. You know, if you haven't got to work, well, you're going to see some ugly duty, but on the other hand, you're going to get paid for it. If something happens to you, your family's going to be provided for you. And so they've been sitting here, mum stumps, enlisting all of these young people who don't even know what the word enlistment means and are not told, okay? Are never told what that word means, okay? They're taking in all our young people and using them as cheap commercial mercenaries while pretending and leaving it undisclosed that they're not honorable soldiers. And they're putting our flag on them when they're actually working for the municipality of Washington, D.C., an international state that they have no right to create rule over.
Right. So that article is 4083, getting caught up after 160 years.
If I haven't, I love Boston. I think that's all the fruition.
Right?
Yeah, you try writing 4,000 articles.
Right?
Anyway.
And this is not your light banter. This is like meaty information that makes people's heads hurt.
Well, I'm sorry. It took me 50 years. I shouldn't say me. It took us 50 years of hard scholarship to bring all of these parts and pieces together and figure it all out. And now that we have them, it's going to take a little effort on your parts to read it and understand it and go, oh my. Because it really is that bad. It is that dishonest. It is that dishonorable. And it is that unlawful. Okay? Now I want to warn everybody about something that Mr. Trump is trying to do as the president of the British Territorial Municipal Corporation operating out of the District of Columbia. He's trying to take over our federal republic. And that's something that we cannot let him do.
He has no authority, number one.
No. The only people, the only entities, the only ones that are competent to restore the actual federal republic are the states. Not the state of states. They do not have the power to resurrect themselves or redelegate power to themselves or anything like that. It all goes back to the states. Maine, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Missouri, Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, come on now, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois, Montana, South and North Dakota. It goes back to us. It goes back to our states. And all our stuff that they've been quote unquote holding in trust in these state trusts that we never gave them any authority to create needs to come back to us. And then we will take our assets and we will decide whether, given the result of the Confederation, we want to recreate a confederation or not. And until then, nobody has any right to say anything about the American subcontractor. It does not belong to Mr. Trump or his municipal corporation. It does not belong to Joe Biden and his municipal corporation. It belongs to no municipal corporation at all. So don't allow another substitution. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to take Trump out of his trouble spot as the president of the British Territorial Municipal Corporation and move him right over into the American catbird seat, where he can pretend to operate the Federal Republic while being hit. The man's a British agent. He's working for the British Territorial Corporation, and he's operating the military, which is and at the front end of all the trouble that we can everybody. Okay, so you don't want Donald Trump in charge, no matter what kind of a businessman he is. Now, I will grant that he's a good businessman. He's done some very interesting, good things in business. But he's working for the other side, and they're trying another substitution fraud. So don't let them. Outlet, tell your kids, tell the local news people. Biden and Trump are presidents of guilty as sin municipal corporations operating out of the District of Columbia. Now, you know, look in the records. I showed everyone where the records are. And exactly what they say. It's in the First and Second District of Columbia Acts. Leaves no doubt whatsoever that the District of Columbia is a municipal corporation. The whole thing, everything inside it, is a District of Columbia municipal corporation. Okay? And it's been that way since 1801. And within that, the skullduggerous cads have contrived to create another municipality, another municipal government, another municipal corporation for profit, operating as an independent international city-state.
United Nations.
And that is what they've been using as the civilian government that they give their allegiance to. So you've got Joe Biden operating all these different little corporations, municipal corporations, operating as the whatever, the head of the international city-state, purportedly under the Constitution of the United States. And you've got Donald J. Trump operating as the president of the British Territorial Municipal Corporation operating out of the District of Columbia under the Constitution of the United States of America. You got these two presidents of foreign municipal corporations all operating out of the District of Columbia and all just full of you know what. These people have scammed us. They have stolen from us. They have racketeered and privateered against us shamelessly for 160 years. And it's time that they got kicked away back home to home to face the music.
Yes.
Now, I may be telling you things that they don't even know. They may be standing there deaf, dumb, and but that's no excuse. Now, I grant that they were never taught this. And I will grant that there have been damn few out of 320 million people who had bothered to learn their own history. But that's still no excuse. Once somebody tells you the truth and shows you where to look for it in the public records, that should be enough. There shouldn't be any argument about it. There shouldn't be any, well, you know, it can't be true. The public records are there. You can see it for yourself. You can look it up online even. So there's no excuse for coming to me and saying that I didn't tell you the truth, or I didn't give you what you needed, or anything about that. I most certainly have. And I have told you and told you and told you and told you, and as anti-intuitive and as oppressive and as illegal and as ugly as it is, it's still nonetheless what actually happened here. This is how our country was overtaken by a military force that they bought and paid for. And now the military is all smoking hot and mad and nobody wants the PLS system. Right. Well, you know, after you go and so on and so on, your innocent civilian matters, cast off such chestnuts as the Federal Reserve note, a promissory note. Why in the hell would anybody ever want to trust you to do as much as count a wooden nickel? Why would anyone want to do business with you? Why would anyone want anything to do with you? But they went, these guys are crooks. It's a whole bunch of useless crooks. So we're going to go back to the old way of, you know, just carriage accounting. It comes in, it goes out. Here's the balance at the end of the day. None of this fancy double accrual counting that the general government offices all just happened to adopt in 1946. That was developed by Easy Eddie O'Hare, Al Capone's bookkeeper. Now, don't you think that should have clued us in? I'll tell you what, when I looked at that and I went and I looked at double accrual bookkeeping and the history of Easy Eddie O'Hara, and I saw how double accrual bookkeeping worked and how Al Capone used that to cheat the IRS on his booze sales and gambling rackets. I thought that's what they're setting up here in 1946 under the creamy, crooked Bretton Woods agreement. They're setting up a system by which they can siphon off and hide their income. And that's exactly what this double accrual bookkeeping system is and was. And you can thank the military for that too. I have never seen such a bunch of goddamn lousy pikers. They did it all. 160 years while taking your money and pretending to protect you from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. They just kind of forgot about their own domestic enemies. So when Abraham Lincoln showed up, they went, oh, here's president. What? Of their commercial corporation. Not the country. Not even the American federal contractor. Totally foreign. Same thing with Donald Trump. Totally foreign. Has no business operating in any capacity. Has no business claiming to be president of the Federation. No capacity to claim that he's president of the Federal Republic. And I know that's going to offend a lot of people who love Donald Trump, but you know, you're being set up to love him. He's being played on stage like an actor. And all this stuff that you've been seeing coming out of Q and other sources, it's just more bullcrap. It's just more narrative. It's just more hopium. It's just more smoke screen and distraction, keeping our attention focused on what they want us to look at, instead of keeping focused on who we are, what we need to do for our country and our actual government, as opposed to all their BS. So please, warn your friends and neighbors. Both Joe Biden and Trump, both of them, are operating as presidents of foreign municipal corporations operating out of the District of Columbia. They're not even operating as Americans. And both these municipal corporations are ultimately owned by the Pope. Because look at the power structure. The Pope, the City of Rome, municipal corporations. And who is the British monarch? Oh, he's the overseer for the Pope. So all the municipal corporations, which are also Roman corporations, are ultimately controlled by the Pope, who controls the British monarch, who controls those municipal corporations. It's set up to make it look like there's two possibly warring factions, when in fact there's just nothing there except it's the Pope's responsibility. And under ecclesiastical law, he has to liquidate his own, he has to break his own rice bowl under ecclesiastical law when he is presented with evidence of unlawful activities that are injurious to living people. Because, why? Because corporations are fictional. They have no right to exist. Whereas living people are not fictional. And we definitely do have a right to exist. And that's why the law is the way it is. And never forget it. Never ever forget it. What I'm teaching you now is stuff that hasn't been uncovered by any group in 300 years. Hasn't even been looked at. And when you think about the tremendous effort that it's taken to paw through things like handwritten 250-year-old treaties written entirely in diplomatic French of the period, you'll have some idea of just how difficult this has been for a whole bunch of grandmas and grandpas and Jethro down on the farm to do with no assistance. Not assistance from our supposed protectors, no assistance, no support, and no real defense at all. We're defended by our own knowledge. We are defended by our own character. And we are defended by our own determination. Those guys in Washington, D.C., about now, they're sitting there wondering how they're going to keep their own lumps together. That's all they're worried about. And they don't care who they sell out. And they don't care who they trample on. Because they've already proven that over and over and over again. World War I and World War II and all of the infinite number of over 250 different conflicts. All of that. It's just nothing but war profiteering. And if they don't have the support of the American people, and they certainly have no reason to have our support at this point, then they've got nothing. What needs to happen is that those municipal corporations, all of them, need to be liquidated. And in the case of the defense incorporations, They need to be transitioned to our direct control as it was meant to be. And anybody that wants to blame America and think that they're going to continue to rob their employers can just leave. They don't have a valid employment contract anyway. So they all have to be drummed out. They all have to be unemployed. And then they have to be brought back sequentially. Because these people were all enlisted under false conditions. They were all enlisted under conditions of non-disclosure. They were all suckered in. And so they all have to be released. They all have to be drummed out of one branch of the service or the other. It has to take place on an ongoing basis. And then they have to make choices about signing up for the actual military. And I have to tell you, our actual military will be very different. Our actual military will be lawful and sane. And it won't go around picking fights. And it won't go around making up phony currencies and enforcing them on people. It won't do all these ugly things. Its job, as stated in the constitutions, is to defend this country and these people. And by golly, that's all it's going to do. It's not going to be able to just pack up and go to Afghanistan and waste our money and grow drugs for 20 years. Okay? That part's over. But anyone who wants to be an honorable soldier will have the opportunity finally. And all those young men and women coming from West Point will have a government that's at least as intelligent as they are. They will no longer be sucked into the maw of an out of control, run amok commercial corporation under false pretenses and conditions of non-disclosure. All these contracts are void. They can walk off the job tomorrow. And so we're going to have to shut them down. We're going to have to release them all. And then they'll have the opportunity to look at the real deal and decide whether they still want a career with the American Armed Forces.
That's going to be amazing.
And peaceful.
I know. And honorable.
And solid. And they will have much better benefits and much better pay.
Right. And be treated much better.
And they won't have to worry about the DA taking 18 months to see them. You see, it wasn't just the fact that they were operating dishonorably and illegally and unlawfully. It's the fact how they treated the people that they used.
Right. Or didn't treat,
Right, didn't provide the... Just the fact that, okay, here's an example of it. The World War II veterans were supposed to get portfolios of stock in all the stock exchange, the big stock exchange things, Fortune 500 companies. But because they didn't ever actually come home, didn't return to the land and soil jurisdiction, didn't know they'd left it either, for that matter, all those stock portfolios were kept by these scum in DC and managed as investment funds for unknown heirs. That's how they really treated our boys and girls that risked their lives, lost their legs. I have nothing but disrespect for those scum, and it's well earned in every respect. And it has nothing to do with our country. Nothing at all. This entire bag of flaming dog dung is their responsibility, not ours. And so it's headed full speed back to the Pope. And he's under obligation to liquidate the whole lot of them. Not just DOD Inc., but all of the municipal corporations that have been operated out of the District of Columbia for the last 150, 160 years, because they are all guilty. They are all a bunch of criminal organizations, every single one of them. And they all need to go down. They need to go down the tubes flying before they create World War III, which is what they're all hoping for. Because why? Because
War is profitable.
they make money.
Lots of money. Whether you win or whether you lose, you still make money.
Right. So why have organizations set up that way? They're nothing but a war machine. They have a conflict of interest. They make their money out of war and destruction. That's where they make the money. Of course they want more in war and destruction.
But a
That's why they
corporation,
get clears.
a corporation can't declare war.
No, that's why they're all mercenary conflicts. That's why they're only war in idiom. They're not war in fact. All of these things, First World War, Second World War, Civil War, none of them qualify as a lawful war of any kind. None of them were declared by a competent Congress. None of them were settled by a competent Congress. Everything that you've seen from the American Civil War on is a mercenary conflict. And all these peace treaties that they've signed are not land jurisdiction treaties. They're only sea jurisdiction treaties between corporations. So they don't count, really. It's just a bunch of pirates saying, okay, well, you know, we'll give you Tortuga and we'll take Barbados. There's no meaning in law. It's just absolute bull, all of it. And they're not acting for our country. So it has to be made clear to everybody, to our people, to their people, to the Pope, to the other governments. It all has to be made clear that our country had nothing to do with this. It was all municipal corporations operating out of the District of Columbia, operating in fraud. That's the truth.
That's the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Well, and we have to do this, people, because otherwise everybody on earth is going to pile on us thinking that we're the problem. I mean, think about this. There are crosshairs on our butts from here to Timbuktu by everybody who's angry at them. Now, if we don't draw the line damn quick and fast, and I've been doing this for 40 years, right? So I've been saying, no, that's it. But if you think about it, our butts are in the crosshairs of every other nation in this on this planet that's been offended and hurt and raped and pillaged and bullied and subjected to crap like Biden pulled in Ukraine, and which NATO pulled in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, Anna. Well, we are right at the top of 2 hours, and that sure went by fast. And wow, it looks like you've got your energy back.
Just get me mad enough and
The mama bear comes out.
Grandma gets a rolling pin. But anyway, yeah. No, but really, and a decent person. I'm not vindictive. I don't disrespect the efforts of individual veterans and the sacrifices that so many people have made. I just say that they made those sacrifices under conditions of non-disclosure. And that the organizations that were benefiting themselves all this while are dirty. They're beyond dirty. They're beyond repair. They're beyond being salvageable. And they are all municipal corporations operating out of the District of Columbia. So they are all foreign, literally. One is operated by the British monarch, one is operated by the Holy See, but ultimately both are owned and operated by the Holy See. So this idea that Trump is a good guy and Biden's a bad guy, and they're going to fight each other out over any of this stuff, it's all bull. Because they both work ultimately for the Pope. And they're both foreigners, and they're both operating foreign municipal corporations. So they're not for us. They haven't operated in our best interest in 160 years, and they are putting out these corporate elections as if they were our public elections, and they're not our public elections, and the end result does nothing to fill our public offices. We need our own elections to happen, both at the state level and at the national level. So, as we are bringing our states back into session, as we are restoring our lawful government, one of the things that you all have to deal with is that they made it illegal for anyone to vote in their elections who isn't a shareholder. And next I'm going to say, why would you want to be a shareholder in a bankrupt foreign municipal corporation? Because that's the seat that they're electing. If I tried, I couldn't make this stuff up.
I know. And that's the crazy thing about all of this. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And we have more and more people who have seen it. And many of them are current military and ex-military. And many of them were there guarding the poppy fields. And they are hopping mad, I'll tell you that.
Well, they should be.
Yep.
If anybody got the blunt end of the stick and the sharp end of the stick, they know. They know. They suffered. They were way out. They need heart attack. They were, they suffered the whole business of hurry up, interspersed with periods of utter terror. And they went through this for however many years, and they lost their friends, and they lost, members of their families. I mean, think of how many military men have lost their families. I think that if we did a study of the divorce rate in the military, it would be something like twice at least the national average. Because people just can't take the stress. Women back home can't take the stress. Men back home can't take the stress. Nobody can take the stress that these people have been asked to bear. And, they come back home and they can't even get help that they were promised from the Veterans Administration. Hello? I know veterans who were shot up. I mean, shot up. And we have replacement hips, replacement knees, pieces of shrapnel permanently embedded, working their way out like little worms. Going through all sorts of hideous crap because of their military service.
Absolutely shameful.
Shameful. I agree. So, our honorable soldiery will not be treated that way. Not any of that anymore. This is a very wealthy country, just in and of itself. And there's no reason for anybody to suffer. Not our military, not our kids. Nobody have to suffer and go without. Not even physically ill, especially.
Because all governments have been fully funded since 1941.
By us. By Americans.
Wow.
And all this is going to come out.
All right, Anna. Well, that big list of 28 items for the short term. I know that that's going to keep you busy this next week. And think. And we still are raising funds for the shipment of the items, the assets coming back from the Vatican. We haven't yet sent the delegation team. We're waiting to hear from the Vatican when.
Right, and we also have to, we're going to be doing something here where we're just shoulder pain. The things that they went over there and they claimed all our gold out of the Vatican vaults. You may have heard about the 650 airplane loads they brought back here. Well, it's only a little bit of what we're actually owed, but what happened to be in the Vatican vault. But they rat rolled that too, and you haven't seen it, have you? Let me give you a guess. Anyway, they haven't been honest about anything. Not in 150 years. Don't expect them to be honest now. Okay, but anyway, we've got just a long laundry list of things to work on there, Terry, and the end result has got to be the dissolution of these municipal corporations. So that's really what the Pope needs to do. That's what he needs to sign off on, and that's what the Vatican Chancery Court needs to sign off on. The other things are more precious than gold. The military, being the military, didn't realize that. They didn't know who to ask, and they didn't know how to ask. So the things that we'll carry back, or that people under our assignment will carry back, are things that are more important by far than all the gold in China.
Right.
Anyway, we will be continuing our efforts, and we will be continuing to inform, which is to inform of the crime on a continuous basis. And we will be doing all the different things that you know that we do. We'll be writing the articles, we'll be publishing the news, we'll be giving you insight into the actual history, we'll be pointing out the pieces and bits of law and of public records that prove that what we're saying is true. We will continue to share the entire depth and breadth of the great fraud. We haven't even begun to scratch the fraud of the public utilities. or the fraud of the railroads.
Right.
And we will most likely be addressing that after the dissolution of the municipal corporations, because once you've got a fraud scheme going, it proliferates. It's like cancer. You know, the one fraud is like a trip lever on the dominoes chain. And soon you've got all these other fraud schemes that are operating in tandem as sidebars to the big fraud scheme. So you've got the big fraud scheme in the District of Columbia, but that is then, you know, proliferating out, and it's creating more fraud schemes like the territorial state of state, like, you know, and the municipal state of state, both of which have no reason to exist. And you have the railroads, and you have these public utility commissions. Well, just where in our law is any such commission authorized? It's not. That's all municipal law. And just a reminder to all the state assemblies. Florida, are you listening? Sarasota County? We don't do regulations. We don't do ordinances. We don't do statutes. We don't do codes. That's not us. That's them. What we do establish is our local law, and our public law, and our law of the land. And they all supersede anything that our employees do for their own sake or for their own self-regulation or anything else. Always remember, we are the employers, they are the employees. And what they do within their corporation to control themselves and all 80 million statutes, regulations, ordinances, and statutes, blah, 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 that they want to adopt to control themselves, that's fine with us. We don't care, it doesn't apply. Okay? And we certainly don't issue any ordinances because that's not us. All right? So if you've done anything silly like issue an ordinance or a statute, just put a big X over it and say, oh, we got confused. We made a mistake. That doesn't apply. That's not the kind of law we actually practice. We're just fumbling to our feet around here and trying to figure out what's what. You know, just
Course correct and move on.
course correct and move on. But always remember, all that stuff doesn't have a thing to do with you. That's your employees. That's a corporation that you employ. Now I have to wonder, they've been so darn busy making up all these regulations and ordinances and statutes and, you know, declaring all this stuff right, left, and sideways and trying to enforce it. And, you know, they must be really depraved people that they need 80 million statutes and ordinances and regulations when the rest of us have hard enough time obeying just 10.
Right? Sounds good, Anna. Well, we're looking forward to that liquidation of the municipality. And so let's all visualize that liquidation.
Just like a wave. And then there's peace and joy and no more of this crap.
Yep.
And for all of you out there who are just, you know, miserable and wondering and who had set your heart on Trump, there are great Americans and they can be elected to office. actual office. We have offices to fill. So just think about that. People who are honest, people who are steadfast, people who have actually held the best interests of our country in their heart. Maybe Donald Trump has. I can't tell you for sure that he ever intended anything but good for America. I can only tell you that he worked for some rats. And is still working for some rats. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I hope you have a fantastic week, Anna. We send our love and our gratitude for all of you, your family and team's hard work. And we're so happy to see you smiling and feisty and back to whatever you can say is normal.
Rat Wumping 101, we're back on track, and all my rat watchers are watching.
Unfortunately, there's a damn lot of rats.
And we have to keep on them. We have to keep bringing them back into track. We have to keep enforcing upon them. And as I pointed out in the recent article about our state citizens, yeah, we've got a lot of enforcement to do.
Yes, indeed. And cleaning up. Need those mops and buckets.
Or as a friend of mine said, the nuclear powered rotor-rooter. Just drill into that swamp, baby. And clean it out.
Good one.
Yeah, and don't forget to go to your happy place, even though all this other stuff is distracting. I mean, every moment that we're alive, every day that we live, every moment that we have to share and to be joyous and be with our friends and our family, every dream that we have, the things that we love, our pets, our kids, our grandkids, our health, these are the things that matter. All this other stuff is just extraneous threats to all of that and to peace and happiness. And we can't let the threats to it detract from the enjoyment of it.
Absolutely, Anna. Thank you for that.
I should say that, February was a kind of a transition month. And March has been a time of more transition, more ups and downs. I think that most people in this country have gone through some degree of trauma over the last couple of months, just in terms of letting go of their own garbage. I know that I have, including that abscess tooth. But, now we're coming into April, and April is the first dash of spring. So we should all be breathing a sigh of relief. The horrible, brutal winter is behind us. The sun is shining brightly. There are little green shoots beginning to wither up in most parts of the country. We have a growing season ahead of us. We have things to take care of. We have our water resources. We have our highways. There's so many things that are positive and growing and good. So let April be a time when we are thinking positive, when we've let go of the past and all the garbage, and we're breaking free into a new reality.
Sounds wonderful, Anna. Thank you for that.
Okay, dear. Well, you're already broken free. You're already running wild, straight into the storm, like a true buffalo. So I'm not gonna worry about you. I'm just gonna settle on for other people's consideration. Sure, my dear. Everybody, plus Godspeed, go forward full speed. Good night.
Take care, Anna. Have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.
You too.
Okay, folks, there you have it. And it's nice to see Anna back in fine form. And it's nice to have that time to pause and reflect. And she definitely made very, very good use of that. Sorry about my doggy barking in the background. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that everybody could hear this week, and I hope we do have the closed captioning now. It's not very good, but it's better than nothing. So we will continue to work on getting you information in many different ways. And we do have the audio transcripts that are available, as well as the video and the timestamps. And there should be some type of a closed captioning file, I think. I'll have to find it. But again, it's probably about maybe 50% accurate. So if there's somebody out there who is good at transcribing and correcting, let me know. It'd be nice to get it a little more accurate so that we would have a reliable record. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I send my love and gratitude to each and every one of you. Have a wonderful week. We will see you here again next week. God bless and good night.
Okay, so there we have it. That was a live broadcast. To be honest, I kind of checked out during in the middle somewhere. Guess I was tired, but I hope you got a good dose of Miss Anna Reitz. I thought maybe I would just open up that why we blame the military. Let me see. It's a 12-minute. I think.
Harry by Anna von Reitz. Information provided to H.E. Cardinal Momberti and the Vatican Chancery Court in regard to our claims March 6, 2005, January 19, 2023, in Seek.
Okay, so she talked about a paper she wrote, Why We Blame the Military. This was posted Sunday, April 2nd. That was just yesterday. And let me see. I guess I could share my screen, but it's the same video we looked at briefly, but then I decided it's too much to have that going while trying to listen to her. So I thought we'd play it at the end. So let me play it. I don't know if I need to share my screen. I guess I could. I guess. Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me see. Well, where is my Zoom? Okay, so Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. Uh, okay. Okay, so let's try to quickly listen to and read this.
Why We Blame the Military by Anna Reitz. Information provided to H.E. Cardinal Momberti and the Vatican Chancery Court in regard to our claims March 6, 2005, January 19, 2023, in Sikh. Why we blame the military. We blame the military because they have been in control and have in fact been illegally occupying this country with territorial forces since 1863, and you can all see what we've gotten in return for our mindlessly loyal support. Racketeering at home and war profiteering everywhere else. The proof is in the pudding. There it is. It falls even more heavily on the military when you see the records and realize that the Department of Defense Incorporated owns and operates all the worst offenders. The NIH, CDC, FDA, FBI, CIA, DOJ, and even the Territorial Congress, Inc., is owned and operated by them as a municipal corporation housed in the District of Columbia. So all that mismanagement is on them. The pandemic and all the deaths and maiming resulting from it is on them. The fraudulent and illegal military confiscation of American property under the known false pretense that we are enemy combatants in an illegal mercenary conflict that ended, so far as we were led to believe, more than 150 years ago. All that theater and injury is on them, too. The entire Scottish Corporation Constitution, fraud and its 14th Amendment and their continued use of this fraud scheme for over 100 years after this entity went bankrupt is on them, too. The existence of the fabricated military districts, serving as a basis for their continued illegal occupation of this country and their oppression of our people via their equally illegal and unauthorized military district courts, stands as additional proof of the self-interest and criminality and criminal mismanagement of these municipal corporations residing in the District of Columbia. These military districts and their courts were supposed to go away once our courts were re-established in the southern states, ex parte Milligan, 1866. And instead, even long after our courts were functioning, these yahoos created new, military districts, for themselves and more, military district courts, to illegally, unlawfully and immorally confiscate property from average Americans under color of law. See the acts of their Territorial Congress, May, 1865. Then you realize that, as they own their Territorial Congress, all this show of budgets and fighting to get what they need is nonsense. It's all nothing but theater and we've been the audience. Then you realize that, as they own their own Territorial Congress, they were key players in having that Congress misinterpret the plenary powers over Washington, D.C. clause in the federal Constitution, so as to create a separate, independent, international city-state and use that as the purported civilian government that they answer to. The full stench of the corruption hits. Their Territorial Congress was never granted the plenary powers. The American subcontractor was supposed to exercise those, and the intent and extent of the grant of plenary power was to run the city of Washington, D.C., as a neutral separate federal capital, not as an independent, international city-state that has no business being here. Not once did the U.S. military turn to the American people and say, "Hey, guys, we've got a problem here. You are supposed to be reconstructing the American federal subcontractor and telling us what to do." Not once, not in over 150 years did they ever turn to their actual employers and tell the truth. And that is what we blame them for, most of all. They clearly wanted to evade our actual civilian control, which is a condition allowing their municipal corporation to exist, and they obviously did evade the control of the lawful government of this country. Now, these same miscreants want to sell us on their digital currency, and we are all saying, no, no thanks. This is because the municipal corporations residing in the District of Columbia have pulled all sorts of unlawful schemes with money, too, including passing off their IOUs Federal Reserve notes as legal tender under force and duress and not crediting the other side of the ledger, what we gave them in exchange for their debt notes. This accounting error created the appearance of a giant national debt that never in fact existed, and they then charged interest on this non-existent debt, and then, at the end of the day, they bankrupted one of their many municipal corporation franchises and committed bankruptcy fraud by claiming that this non-existent debt and the phony interest on it was our debt. It's not our debt. It's a debt owed to us, to the extent that it ever existed at all. Frankly, digital currency can disappear too conveniently, and it can be used to front another, something for nothing, scheme too easily, and worst of all, it can be used to create a command and control surveillance matrix that can be politically manipulated to arbitrarily deny our basic right to privacy, and our right to buy, sell, and trade. No, we don't desire or need that, and we won't pay for it or allow it to function on our soil or be misrepresented as anything we approved of or advocated. The answer is no, and that means no digital currency and no more military script being passed off as legal tender at all. Nothing that seeks to convert a right into a privilege will be abided. That's not in our contract with any of these municipal corporations, and we are offended that they continue to try all these end runs and changes and pile on extra services we never asked for or ordered from them. We aren't the ones that illegally securitized living flesh. We aren't the ones that illegally and unlawfully substituted a president for the president. We haven't run the biggest money laundering scheme in human history. We didn't fabricate an incompetent and dishonest financial system. We aren't guilty of fraud, racketeering, or war profiteering, bankruptcy fraud, or anything else. These municipal corporations residing in the District of Columbia and in other so-called enclaves around the world, like the global Federal Reserve banking system snuggled up in their own private enclave in Switzerland, are guilty of all of that and more. Most of all, we are not the object of the command and control of these municipal corporations. They are the object of our command and control instead. They can take their XRP and all the rest of their gobbledygook digital currency and QFS blather and shove it, and that's straight from the actual unincorporated Federation of States. We wish for a simple, transparent system to return prepaid credit to the victims of all this chicanery and a cash system based on actual assets that uses carriage accounting. We have built that for ourselves and for our military to use from now on. It may be old school, but it's honest and it works. These municipal corporations residing in the District of Columbia are the ones that need to be monitored and surveilled and kept out of other people's pockets. Not us. We aren't the criminals responsible for this smoking pile of dog dung. They are. Lincoln had no authority to issue orders to the military. Once he passed himself off as a president, instead being the president, he was acting in fraud, a fraud which left the municipal corporations in the District of Columbia and their employees operating without oversight from the actual civilian government of this country. It was fraud, and it was illegal and unlawful even back then, in the early stages of it. All the presently existing municipal corporations in the District of Columbia, and their franchises operating without authority to do so throughout the United States, have been tainted by this fundamental fraud against their employers and by their own actions ever since. We wish for all the municipal corporations that have been residing in the District of Columbia to be liquidated, including the military examples of the same. They have all been criminally mismanaged in breach of trust and service contract for over 150 years. We wish for these endlessly criminal organizations to be shut down outright or transferred and transitioned in the case of our actual defense needs. We wish for all territories and territorial assets of these offending municipal corporations to be returned to us as they are our possessions under international law. They do not now and never did belong to any municipal corporation. They belong to the United States, not the United States. And that's the proper nomenclature since 1851. If the perpetrators of these schemes don't immediately stop all mRNA injections of all kinds, to us and to our animals, they will go down in history as a criminal mercenary force that attacked their employers and their own people back home. They and their uniforms will be subject to eternal shame and infamy, and they will deserve that. It will also be another very black mark against the principals operating these municipal corporations. Who would ever want to do business with any municipal service provider, when they can see how we have been served by these fraud artists, robbed, abused, and misrepresented? And even now, murdered and maimed senselessly by municipal corporations acting under color of law? China would have to be crazy to do business with these corporations, so would Ukraine, so would any other nation. The illegal occupation of Britain, the United States, the Old Commonwealth, and most of the countries of Western Europe and Japan by so-called territorial forces, speaks for itself, as does their illegal and immoral behavior in the Middle East. Attacking Syria and Libya, both under false pretenses, is just one example of the actual evil empire, the British territorial empire, that has been benefiting itself from these lawless municipal corporations housed in our District of Columbia. These municipal corporations residing in the District of Columbia and in other enclaves around the world have become famous for their predatory meddling and self-interest in every instance from Angola to Venezuela and Zimbabwe, forcing changes of government, selling weapons to both sides of every conflict, imposing on other governments to allow criminal activities in their countries, stripping the natural resources out of other countries, and all of it adds up to nobody trusts them and nobody wants to do business with these cretins. And why should they? These are foreign municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia. Purportedly, they are here to fulfill our constitutional contracts with their principals, except that they have done everything possible to evade their actual obligations and have instead sought to defraud, entrap, and misrepresent their employers. We blame the U.S. military for all of this skullduggery, malfeasance, misrepresentation, misadministration, and outright crime, because they literally own and make profit from the organizations responsible for it. We blame them for taking orders from fraud artists, beginning with Abraham Lincoln. Instead of arresting the treasonous miscreants, the military put them in power. We blame the military for substituting fake corporate elections for our public elections and doing nothing to inform, support, help, or defend their actual employers. We hold them to account for illegally occupying this country for 160 years, and racketeering against us and illegally confiscating assets from us, innocent civilians, the whole time. We blame them for their part in the entire litany of unlawful activities carried out by these municipal corporations housed in the District of Columbia and their unauthorized franchises in our states. We blame the U.S. military for the cover-up they've provided themselves, the lies they've told the American people, the misery they have caused at home and abroad for no discernible reason but to accrue more money and more oppressive control over civilian populations. We blame them for lying and saying that we were absent, and we observed that they had no trouble finding us after they deliberately misidentified us as part of the territorial and municipal citizenry and trafficked our good names into their foreign jurisdiction. We blame the U.S. military for sicking their own municipal employees, like the FBI, on us, and for teaching these ignoramuses to call us sovereign citizens, and for pretending that we are the problem, when self-evidently, they are the ones that got off track a long time ago. We blame them because all these same people and subcontractors were supposed to be protecting us against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and getting paid the whole time to do it. Guess they conveniently forgot about the domestic, with respect to them, part of that obligation. And now, we wish for the District of Columbia municipal corporations to be liquidated and, or transitioned and transferred to our direct control without any more monkey business. We claim every peso worth of everything they have stolen, leveraged, and rat-holed as federal pension funds, public investment funds, and so on. Issued by Anna Maria Riesinger, fiduciary. The United States of America, in care of Box 520,994. Big Lake, Alaska 99,652.
Well, okay, so that was a powerful letter dissolving, the DC Ponzi scheme, basically. So that was that. Basically the military, she seems to have found out that they own all of the alphabet agencies. So this is quite literally a military occupation that we're under. And so that's why, she say why we blame the military. So that was that. There was a letter that I seem to have had here, or another letter she wrote. I don't know if this was an interview. It's 17 pages though. So I think I will spare us this one. Yeah, I don't really feel like reading all 17 pages. Maybe I should just link it. It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, and this is already over 2 hour video going on 3. I might spare you this one. Well, okay, so those bullet points look very interesting, but again, it's a kind of a lot. So maybe we should either save that for another video or link it to this one. Personally, I like I said, I kind of checked out. I was a little tired. I didn't realize I would nod off during the presentation of Anna, but it is the end of my workday. Um, but the whole point was for to get this. I watch Anna often enough that generally I know the spiel, but this is more so just to get the listening audience a little more familiar with Anna. And also, once again, we are the Indians in all of this. That's what our concern should be. She's pulling a lot of authority. And at one point when she was talking in the video, it just dawned on me, like, if we don't catch up, she's really doing. And I'm not mad at her for this. It has to be done. But if as American Indians, we kind of still think we can play ball with the corporation while this woman is seeking dissolution, dissolving all this fuckery. Really, we're going to be giving our country to freedom fighters like Anna, and really we'll stay I don't know, sort of lost, if we don't really. If she seems to be, making some serious demands and serious accusations, all of which she's providing receipts for. I just feel that maybe as American Indians, we might have to consider sitting down with Anna at the very least, because she it's not that she's not doing a great job. It's just that it could mean the difference between us staying as American Indians in obscurity or standing up to this great work of Anna and saying, hey, we see you're doing a lot of research into the fraud. We need to let you know that they've also committed the fraud of changing our identity, and here's our proof. So maybe we need to, be that voice of authority that where Anna doesn't have that authority, or and added a whole new dimension to this fight. I really think that she's doing an excellent job. I really do. There's just a part of me that I find comfort in knowing that someone sees this fraud more than, even if it is more than the American Indian has ever fathomed, at least someone. So I hope that at some point, once she realizes how the fraud changed American Indians into African Americans, it might be the key that in the fight that is needed. I recall a while back, someone challenged even Anna with all this knowledge this woman has. Someone challenged her and said, "But wait, you're not it's not your native country." And she told us this. She spoke about this. She was addressing, I think, the banks. And they were like, basically, well, why are you doing this? You're a foreigner in this. And right there, it probably would have been just perfect for an American Indian to have been present, to stand with this woman and really get shit done, as we are we would be the ones that, when they told her, "Oh wait, but you're not an American Indian. You're not, this is not you're not you know, someone on this land that has that kind of authority." They challenged her authority because she wasn't, uh, American Indian. But I believe she mentioned something about her grandfather or parent fighting in the war and claiming that she fought for this, as an American. So I think, if I recall correctly, that is how that went down. But what I'm saying is there may be other opportunities where we could actually assist Anna, and it would be easier for her, because we would be the authority, basically saying, well, we stand behind this, and as the first people of the land, we also demand these changes made because this is our indigenous homeland. We could say that where Anna cannot, and I see that this would really help both we together to save our nation and to save our America. So on that note, maybe I will try to grab this, that link. Where does it go? Oh, okay, so it doesn't go to, all right. It doesn't seem to go where I thought it went. But yes, so on that note, I think I'm gonna try to, yeah, it's just about 3 hours. I think I'm going to bid you a good evening and thank you for watching. I really feel like, I have more Anna exposure to do, meaning, oh, where's my Zoom? Every now and then I lose my Zoom place. Very annoying. So I don't know. Now you're looking at a screen that I'm not really. What happened to my Zoom? Let's see. Where'd she go? Is that it? What happened? Where's my Zoom? Let me stop. Oh, that's what I have to do. I have to stop the share. Okay. So yeah, we are just about at the 3 mark, so I'm gonna let you go and say thank you so much again for watching. Until next time, I do think we're gonna stay on an Anna kick for a while, and just follow her a few more sessions, perhaps. So thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was you got something out of it. There's hope for us. So peace, love, joy, wealth, health, your land back, your identity back, your status back as an American Indian, and all the exceptionally good things